the fans, in my opinion, the fans really made Karrion Kross. I feel like Karrion Kross is a type of talent that has been undervalued. It's been a crazy week for TKO. Groundbreaking deals on both the WWE end and the UFC end. TKO is very strategic in the decisions that they are making.
Get stealing, woo, wheeling, dealing, limousine riding, jet flying, son of a gun. Yeah! Kurt Angle, yeah! Why, Triple H, you son of a pie? Tell me why. And Tony Khan, this is also on you.
I am going to ruin wrestling.
Just get over it.
It is Monday, August 11th, 2025. A lot of things went down in the realm of professional wrestling this past week. Of course, we are just coming off of SummerSlam, which I thought was a very good show. I actually had the privilege of attending the show, and it was a fun experience. It was my first WWE event since 2021. The last WWE event I went to was WrestleMania 37 night 1. I didn't go to the second night. I went to the first night. And of course, I had a blast at SummerSlam. I went to American Dream. It was a fun experience. I loved it. I love going to American Dream, by the way. I'm from Jersey, so I literally just took the train there. But we had a lot of things happen, man, in wrestling. I mean, we had Raw, Dynamite, SmackDown. If you guys watch NXT, you guys watched NXT. I personally don't watch NXT. But we had the new announcement that WWE signed a multi-year $1 billion deal with ESPN, which is essentially going to be airing their premium live events starting in 2026. That is a huge deal, and it's going to be available on the new ESPN streaming service. And we will be talking about that on this show because that is huge for WWE. Huge for WWE. If there's anything that WWE is good at behind the scenes, they know the art of negotiation. WWE knows the art of negotiation. And speaking of media rights, it was actually just announced that the UFC, which is also owned by TKO, announced a new multi-year partnership with Paramount, which of course owns CBS or is owned by CBS. I don't know. I don't know what the deal is with there, but Paramount essentially owns CBS, and they're going to be airing the pay-per-views on Paramount Plus. And think about this. You no longer have to pay the $80 for the UFC pay-per-view. Think about that. You don't if you watch the UFC, now you have to pay for ESPN Plus, and then you have to pay the separate $80 just to buy the pay-per-view on ESPN Plus, which is crazy. But they announced a new deal with Paramount, and they're going to be airing their pay-per-views on on Paramount Plus. Everything ends in a plus now, which is crazy. You got Disney Plus, ESPN Plus, Paramount Plus. I mean, what's next? What's next? So many streaming services end in plus. Get more creative. That's why I love the name HBO Max. You know what I'm saying? But we got that new deal. But we are also going to be talking about Karrion Kross, which is actually going to be the first topic on this show. If you guys do not know, Karrion Kross, from what it looks like, is no longer with World Wrestling Entertainment. Him and his wife, Scarlett Bordeaux, both of their contracts have essentially expired. And it sparked a lot of conversation across the entire wrestling community because Karrion Kross is somebody, especially throughout the last couple of months, that has really been gaining a lot of momentum in terms of fan engagement and in terms of just, getting that big support from the audience. And WWE, from what it looks like, did everything in their power to really just ignore all of that noise that was going on within the fan base. Some people are calling this a work. Some people are calling this real. We do not know what's real and what's not. And at the end of the day, that's the beauty of professional wrestling. Professional wrestling is all about the illusion. I talked about this on last week's episode when I talked about WWE and Real. Pro wrestling is all about the illusion. It's all about the illusion. Doesn't matter if kayfabe is dead. if you want if you want pro wrestling to give you that illusion, you have to make it give you that illusion. And I feel like this whole Karrion Kross situation, whether it's a work or a shoot, in my opinion, I think is brilliant, because this is, if this is real and Kross is actually gone from the WWE, it's a blessing in disguise. But at the same time, if this whole situation is a work, it's only going to raise Kross's stock even higher. And if you're Karrion Kross right now, you are the talk of the wrestling industry. If you're Karrion Kross right now, Kross, I mean, bro, it's like a win-win situation. It's a win-win situation, and that's great if you're Karrion Kross. But we're going to be talking about Karrion Kross right here on the WrestleHavoc podcast. It is Monday, August 11th, 2025. Thank you guys so much for being right here on the show, whether you guys are watching on the WrestleHavoc channel or on WNN platforms. I thank you guys so much for watching this edition of the WrestleHavoc podcast. We got a lot to get into. And before I get into all this craziness, please make sure to like and subscribe to the WrestleHavoc channel right here on YouTube, in which we discuss everything in and outside of the squared circle. Make sure to like and subscribe for more content. And as the friggin' referee would say, ring that damn bell for more notifications. Without any further ado, let's get straight into the wrestling talk. All right, we're going to be talking about Karrion Kross. Karrion Kross, as you guys know, from what it looks like, is no longer with World Wrestling Entertainment. He's no longer with World Wrestling Entertainment, and from what it looks like, he hasn't signed a new contract with WWE. Apparently, Karrion Kross was disappointed in the new deal that he was offered by WWE, and this is huge. Now, WrestleVotes is stating this, and I quote, "There are people within WWE corporate with no ties to creative or anything storyline-wise who are under the impression that the Karrion Kross and Scarlett situation, from what it looks like, they are no longer with the company." Dave Meltzer himself has stated this, and I quote, "I believe the WWE is going to be back, or I should say Karrion Kross is going to be back with the WWE. You know, we'll see. They're not telling anyone anything, but everyone is pretty skeptical. It's like we're working the boys on this. If he comes back, you can say yes, but it's not like they're being fooled. It's not like guys are coming and going. Oh no, he's really gone. No one is saying that. They're just sort of like, we don't know or whatever." He continues on, and he stated this, and I quote, "Karrion Kross reportedly given an offer by WWE, which he still hasn't signed as of this week." And Dave Meltzer stated, "It's definitely being kept quiet. It's a weird one. There's way too much talk, and the nature of the talk makes me think that there's more to it. They give him an offer, and he didn't sign as of this week. He may be a free agent." So that was a lot of the talk going on around Karrion Kross. He was offered a new deal, but he didn't sign the new deal, effectively making him a free agent as of yesterday. Now, this is the crazy part. As all of this information is being fed to us, Karrion Kross on his YouTube channel, and he's been doing a lot of work on his Killer Kross YouTube channel. That's Killer Kross, if you guys don't know, is his name outside of the WWE, which honestly, in my opinion, is a much more badass name than just Karrion Kross. I understand WWE loves making, their own names for people or adjusting people's names whenever they come into the WWE, but Killer Kross is just such an awesome name, in my opinion. But Karrion Kross has had his own YouTube channel, and he's really been just documenting a lot of his work. And I believe he came out with the book, and I think it came out last week. And last night, a video premiered on his YouTube channel. And it was called "My WWE Contract Ends Today." And I didn't watch the full video. I only watched like some snippets of the video. But right off the bat, I will say this. I believe, and correct me if I'm wrong, I believe Karrion Kross does his own editing. Dude, Karrion Kross has a future. I mean, Karrion Kross is just so good at what he does. If that is true and Karrion Kross does all the editing, not going to lie, man, Karrion Kross is one talented man. But one of the things that I really got out of that video is how humble Karrion Kross is behind the scenes. Like, Karrion Kross, I mean, his character is really intense. But outside of the ring, I mean, dude, Karrion Kross is one of the most humble individuals in wrestling. One of the most humble individuals out there. And this whole video was documenting his book tour, him going on tour and, meeting fans, showing all of the support for his fans and talking about his contract situation in some snippets. So the video would show Karrion Kross talking in a random hotel room, talking about his experience in WWE, how he loves working in the WWE. And then some snippets would talk about his contract situation. And then they would switch back to Karrion Kross, meeting up with fans and, showcasing the support that a lot of the fans are giving Karrion Kross, which is fantastic to say the least. I really like what they did there. But it was a very well-produced video. A very, very, very well-produced video. And some of the key points that I could give you guys when it comes to this whole Karrion Kross deal. Karrion Kross spoke about the fans feeling ignored. And this is actually very true. Karrion Kross, throughout the past couple of months, has been one of the most over acts that hasn't really appeared on WWE TV. And he would make some appearances there. I mean, he just had a feud with Sami Zayn. He had a pretty all right match with Sami Zayn at SummerSlam, but I feel like the wrong man won. But it's interesting how Karrion Kross lost, and now his co-contract situation is, from what it looks like, he's gone with the company. I mean, it was very weird seeing Karrion Kross lose like that to Sami Zayn. You would expect with the storyline that they were telling with Sami Zayn and Karrion Kross that Karrion Kross would have easily went over in that match, but no, they didn't have Karrion Kross go over in that match. Karrion Kross spoke on the video that he uploaded last night, or that premiered last night on YouTube, on his YouTube channel, and he talks about how the fans felt ignored when it came to their support of him. And he stated this, and I quote, "Things feel effed. It's impossible to ignore, and I don't want people to feel like they're being ignored. And a lot of them do, which is why it's getting louder. And I knew this was going to happen. If we didn't lean into what the audience is asking for or what they want to see, they're going to get louder. Pretending it's not there or convincing yourself it's going to go away, it's not." So he talks about the fan support, and the fan support was crazy for Karrion Kross, not just this past week, but throughout the past couple months. Like a little before WrestleMania were really started. But I mean, Karrion Kross to me is one of those acts on WWE TV that honestly, if you really think about it, he embodies everything that WWE would want in a quote-unquote WWE superstar. Karrion Kross is literally the whole deal. I know a lot of fans on social media are like, oh my God, but he's a bad wrestler, blah, 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 blah. I always tell people this. It's not about just the moves. I mean, the people that say this are the ones that just love their work rate, and that's it. Nothing wrong with work rate, but that doesn't sell tickets, unfortunately. We've seen that time and time again. Work rate just does not sell tickets. What sells tickets is character work. What sells tickets is story. That's what sells. That is what sells, not work rate. You could be the best wrestler in the world, but if you do not have a compelling character, you're not going to be successful. I am sorry. Why do you think guys like MJF are so successful in an environment where people love doing all the work rate stuff? And again, I love work rate. I think it's great, but it doesn't make money. It doesn't sell. You need to do more when you are a wrestler. You need to tell a compelling story. You need to have that intensity. You need to have that emotion. And I feel like a lot of these independent wrestlers don't see that, unfortunately. I love work rate. Don't get me wrong. I love work rate. I think I love me a great wrestling match. Trust me, I do. But especially in American style wrestling in the US, dude, story is what sells. And we've seen that proven time and time and time again. That's what sells. But Karrion Kross is one of those acts on WWE TV, one of those characters on WWE TV that you would expect WWE would get behind, but clearly they weren't. And to me, in my opinion, if this whole situation is real, and I'm kind of 50-50 on it, on one hand, I do believe that this whole thing is a work, because the way that everybody is playing things around, I mean, it does sound like a whole elaborate work. But at the same time, it does sound like I'm acting like a wrestling mark, which I am. But at the same time, I mean, this whole situation sounds very real considering, number one, Karrion Kross has announced bookings on... he didn't announce bookings, but he was, asked to get booked on social media. He offered his email. They're accepting independent bookings now, as well as Scarlett Bordeaux. Also, Kross and Scarlett opened up a new pro wrestling tee store, so they're really going further into this. If you are a wrestler and you leave the WWE and you announce a pro wrestling tee store, clearly you are gone from the company. Clearly you are gone. But, I mean, who knows? Maybe how long is he going to be a free agent? Maybe he secretly signed a new deal with WWE. Maybe he hasn't signed anything at all and he's waiting for the right time to come back to the WWE. Again, this whole thing could be a whole work. Karrion Kross, if you really think about it, Karrion Kross, it's literally a win-win situation for this guy. It really is a win-win situation. Because what if, he does all these different independent bookings and he's getting bookings all across the board? It's only going to raise his stock even more. What if that leads to him to return to the WWE? That's only going to raise his stock even more, and he's probably going to be a main event act. What if this whole thing isn't a work and he's actually taking these independent bookings but gets signed to a major place, like maybe an AEW? That'd be a big signing for AEW. It'd be a great place for him. It'd be a great place for him, and honestly, be one of the things that honestly AEW would really be smart about doing. AEW could easily sign a guy like Karrion Kross, but many of these other promotions are very skeptical about possibly signing Kross, and rightfully so, because they do not know whether it's real or fake, whether or not this is a work or not. It's a win-win situation for Kross. Whatever happens, Kross is going to make money regardless. But he went further in this video. And he talked about his contract, negotiations, and he talks about how it profoundly left him disappointed. He stated this in the video, and I quote, "I expressed interest in renegotiating in early January with WWE. I think it's crazy, preposterous that anyone would think that I wouldn't want to be there or go somewhere else. It's frustrating because, like you express your interest to stay and be here and do things. I'm not going to beg. I've made it very clear. So many months have gone by and never had a single conversation about it until recently. And I don't even feel like the conversation I had was an actual serious one. The conversation made me really angry because I don't feel like it was a real conversation. Somebody had contacted me and we briefly discussed, and it was a very short conversation. And the conversation was done and there wasn't really anything discussed of my substance. And that really actually didn't make me angry. It didn't really make me upset. It just really profoundly disappointed me." That's what he stated about his recent contract talks with WWE. Now, it's no secret, TKO, they are, it's not really WWE, it's TKO. They are a very money-hungry corporation. Like, WWE has always been corporate ever since they went public, all the way back in 2000. But ever since TKO, or Endeavor, I should say, ever since Endeavor bought the majority shares of the company, I mean, they've went from corporate to like super corporate. And clearly, they love cutting costs. I mean, I know a lot of people that work in the offices of WWE in Stamford are really suffering right now because of the cuts that TKO has been making. It's crazy. But Karrion Kross saying that he was left very disappointed with the contract negotiations, I mean, I feel like it doesn't surprise me because, again, we're talking about TKO. We're not just talking about WWE, we're talking about TKO. And they're not willing to spend, even though they're making a boatload of money, billions, we're talking about billions of dollars. They're not willing to spend the amount of money that maybe when Vince McMahon was running the company was willing to spend when he owned the company, if that makes any sense. They're willing to spend the money for like main event talent, But like for a talent like Karrion Kross, who's not really being positioned at the top of the card right now, they're not really willing to spend that type of money. I know a lot of people that watch the UFC talk about fighter pay this, fighter pay that, fighter pay that. A lot of people are saying that the fighters are vastly underpaid in the UFC, and that could be a thing as well. I don't know the whole deal about that, but I mean, TKO, they own both the UFC and WWE. It's going to be a very similar business structure. I mean, it already is that way, but still, it's a very interesting situation. Or what if again, this whole thing could be a work and Karrion Kross is just trying to sell the story? Who knows? But it's very interesting. I mean, you have Karrion Kross and Scarlett Bordeaux accepting independent bookings now. They both opened up a new pro wrestling tee store. And if you're gone by the WWE, the number one thing you're going to do is open up a pro wrestling tee store, especially if you're going to work the indies. That's like the number one thing that a lot of these wrestlers do when they leave WWE. They open up a pro wrestling tee store. And it's smart because they're able to sell a bunch of merch and they're able to make their own schedule. It's a very, very interesting situation. Kross continues on, and later in the video or earlier in the video, he talks about some of the ideas that were floating around when it came to his character and his involvement with other talent. One thing that he noted was that he stated that Bray Wyatt had an idea for himself and the Righteous. You guys remember the Righteous? They were a part of AEW / Ring of Honor, but they left the company a couple months ago. Became an extension of the Wyatts. So the Righteous and Karrion Kross being an extension of the Wyatts honestly sounds like an awesome idea to think. But yeah, man, when it comes to Karrion Kross, what are my overall thoughts on Karrion Kross as a whole? Karrion Kross is somebody I feel like who has been undervalued tremendously. And it's not only just now. It's been years ago. If you guys remember when they signed Killer Kross back, I think it was like 2019, he made his debut in NXT and had a crazy run in NXT. And he was one of the longest reigning NXT champions out there. And he was booked like $1 million. I mean, like, bro, NXT was Triple H's baby, and he booked Karrion Kross like a freaking killer. And he had great matches in NXT. And keep in mind, this was during the pandemic. And what happened? Vince McMahon was still running things, and it was so weird because during the pandemic, this was at the point where NXT was still on the USA Network. They've been on the USA Network for like 2 months, not 2 months, 2 years at this point. And Raw and NXT were on the same network, right? Raw and NXT were on the same network. And think about this. You watch NXT. Imagine if you watch both shows and you watch Killer Kross or Karrion Kross on NXT and you see him being so dominant. But you also watch Raw. So one week you tune into Raw and you see a match between Karrion Kross and Jeff Hardy. I swear on my mother's life, these people were that brain dead that they literally had the current NXT champion. They had the current NXT champion, Karrion Kross, lose to Jeff Hardy in like less than 5 minutes. If you watch both shows, which by the way aired on the USA Network at the time, both shows that aired on the USA Network, you're probably looking at yourself and being like, dude, I am literally the viewer and I'm being treated like I'm an idiot. And then all of a sudden, what do? We all know what happened. Karrion Kross got called up. He I don't know what the hell he was wearing. Like they made him like dress like a freaking anime villain or something like that. Like a villain from the Ninja Turtles or the Power Rangers. It was crazy. They had him wear like a mat. Like everything that made Karrion Kross cool in NXT, they stripped down because Vince McMahon had a different vision for him. And he did that with a lot of guys in NXT. I mean, Keith Lee is a pure example of that. There was literally nothing wrong with Keith Lee at all in NXT. Once he got called up to the main roster, they literally stripped away everything that made Keith Lee special. They stripped away everything that made Keith Lee special, and they turned him into Bearcat Lee. And I don't care what anybody says, that was a sabotage by WWE, essentially telling Triple H, which, by the way, was in the hospital, saying, yeah, your vision for wrestling sucks, and we're going to take over this now. Look what they did with NXT. Oh, but NXT is great now. Yeah, but the NXT you see today is a very different NXT when it first started as NXT 2.0, because NXT 2.0 was god-awful. Horrible, horrible, horrible stuff. The NXT you see today is not NXT 2.0. It's just not. It's just NXT. It's Shawn Michaels' vision of NXT. What you saw with NXT 2.0 was Vince McMahon's vision of NXT. But back to Karrion Kross. Karrion Kross, he gets called up to the main roster, and essentially he gets released from the company. I believe he got released. Correct me if I'm wrong. And he does. I believe he does a couple of independent bookings. I believe he did work a little bit for Impact, because before his initial run in WWE, he worked for Impact or TNA, whatever you want to call it. It was Impact at the time. But he did a couple independent bookings. I think he also worked the Ric Flair's Last Match show. And he was only gone for a couple of months. He was only gone for a couple of months until Triple H first took over back in the summer of 2022. And once Triple H took over in the summer of 2022, we were like, oh my God, this is great. Because the main roster is finally going to be good again. Because we all knew Triple H has a great vision for wrestling, and it shows. I mean, why is WWE successful now? Why is WWE going through this boom period right now? A lot of that has to do with Triple H and his vision. He's essentially taking what he did with NXT and implementing that to the main roster. And that's what he did for like the first 3 years, which was amazing. But he brought back Karrion Kross. And everybody was like, oh my God, this is great. They brought back Karrion Kross. His first appearance back was in a segment with Roman Reigns in the closing segment of SmackDown. And at that point, everybody was like, oh my God, who is Karrion Kross gonna, is Karrion Kross gonna dethrone Roman Reigns? No, he's not. It's gonna be Cody Rhodes. But you get my drift. And then ever since then, he would feud with guys like Drew McIntyre. He had a great storyline with The Miz. Of course, we can't talk about Karrion Kross's recent run without talking about The Final Testament. They brought in the Authors of Pain, but if you really think about it, The Final Testament didn't really go nowhere. And that was where like the whole Miz storyline started. But then after that, he kind of just fell by the wayside in terms of the booking. It was kind of on and off. Like they'd put him on TV and then like they would not put him on TV. It's a very similar thing that Tony Khan would do whenever you watch AEW. It's really start and stop. And when you do that to a certain wrestler, especially a certain wrestler that fans are starting to get behind, that's when the backlash starts when it comes to the fan base. And that is where really the support from Karrion Kross really just kind of spearheaded into insanity. And of course, Karrion Kross had that promo in the Sam Roberts podcast recapping WrestleMania. And a lot of people were like, oh my God, it was a shoot. It was a shoot. It was not a shoot. It was a work. It was a worked shoot. But it was a very good promo that Karrion Kross cut. A very good, intense promo that Karrion Kross cut, essentially expressing his frustrations with the company. But again, it was not real. It was not a shoot. It was a worked shoot. So it was planned out. But WWE really went nowhere with it. They would have Karrion Kross cut promos during the commercial breaks on Netflix. And, the amount of fan support that he got was insane. And then he entered a storyline with Sami Zayn, which was not bad at all. The feud that he had with Sami Zayn was pretty good. But I always said this, the wrong man won at SummerSlam. But if that is true and his contract situation wasn't really resolved and he didn't sign a new deal, I mean, I would understand why they would have Karrion Kross not go over if this whole thing, again, is a shoot. But the fans, in my opinion, the fans really made Karrion Kross. I mean, I've never seen... I mean, he's very similar in a sense of like Daniel Bryan or CM Punk. Daniel Bryan was a talent, or Bryan Danielson, when he was in the WWE, would constantly, like, the fans would hijack shows in favor of Daniel Bryan. Like, everybody, like, they'd do a match between John Cena and Randy Orton, they wouldn't give a damn. They just wanted to see Daniel Bryan. And I can remember the fans being upset when Daniel Bryan lost the Royal Rumble not once, but twice. I believe in the 2014 Rumble where Rey Mysterio came out, I believe, at number 30, and everybody expected Daniel Bryan, but he didn't come out, which was crazy. I don't know why WWE just revolts or, just craps on their fan base like they do, but that's what they did. But in terms of Karrion Kross, I feel like Karrion Kross is a type of talent that has been undervalued because WWE, and a lot of people have been saying this, WWE tends to focus on story, and that's great. That's what you should focus on. But as of recently, they've been focused more on just moments. They've been focused on just moments, and maybe that is the problem. Maybe you're just focused on moments rather than actually telling actual stories. WWE always says moments this, moments that, moments. Give me a good story. Give me a good, compelling story. Instead of being focused on going head-to-head with AEW, which clearly, you're more successful than them, but clearly you're still focused on going after them. Focus on telling an actual good story. It's all about the moments. You want to know what was a good moment? Where Karrion Kross cut that shoot promo. That was a good moment. And Karrion Kross still fell by the wayside. And WWE just didn't follow up on that whole situation. I'm still kind of skeptical on this whole Karrion Kross. I'm still relatively skeptical. I'm skeptical. I'm 50-50. A part of me thinks that this is a work. A part of me thinks this is a shoot. I'm very skeptical when it comes to this whole situation. I am. But we cannot deny that WWE, if you really kind of think about it, kind of sabotaged. They sabotaged Karrion Kross. Because Karrion Kross is the type of individual. He is the type of guy that embodies everything that WWE would want in a wrestler. That's what makes this whole situation frustrating. He embodies everything he essentially embodies everything that WWE wants in a guy. He has the look. Look at Scarlett. Scarlett is essentially his valet, and the art of the valet is just not existent anymore. You don't really see a lot of valets in wrestling anymore, and Scarlett is still like she's keeping the tradition of a valet, which is great. He embodies everything that WWE would want in a wrestler. He has the look. He has the promo ability. Oh, but his in-ring is garbage. Bro, it's not about the in-ring, and WWE has shown us that constantly. It's not about the in-ring. The in-ring is vastly important. I'm not denying that. It is very important. Very, very, very important. But what's more important is your character work and your connection with the audience. And Karrion Kross has literally everything that you would want in a WWE wrestler. Everything. Look at the fan reaction to Karrion Kross. Another thing that drove me nuts. I was at the post show for SummerSlam. I wasn't at the full post show. I only stuck around when Becky Lynch and Dominic Mysterio came out. But I watched the post show when I went back home. And let me tell you, me being at the post show was awesome. I love the formula for these post shows for WWE. The crowd, it's just like it's on another level. It's amazing. But Triple H was at the post show. Think about this. Triple H was at the post show, and behind Triple H, you had all of the fans chanting, "We want Kross, we want Kross." And you know what Triple H said? Instead of acknowledging the "We want Kross" chants, he instead says, "Wow, these fans, they're chanting, 'We want Brock, we want Brock.'" Talk about pure stupidity. They weren't chanting, "We want Brock." They were chanting, "We want Kross." Because they know a talent like Karrion Kross, who has everything that WWE wants in a wrestler, they just decide to do nothing with him. And you know what bothers me even more is that everything what's going on with Karrion Kross, and I'm only saying this if this is a shoot. Everything that I say now in terms of this quote unquote rant, if this all becomes a work, if this is all a work, brilliant on Karrion Kross and WWE's end. This is brilliant. But if this is a shoot, this is what I'm going to say. WWE, especially back when Vince McMahon was running things, if you put yourself over without talent relations or creative knowing, you'd be punished for that. You know, WWE always tends to preach, oh, you need to have the connection with the audience. You need to have the connection with the audience. But if you yourself intentionally get yourself over, which is what you are supposed to do if you are a wrestler in any promotion. If you are a wrestler in any promotion, you need to get over whether you are a heel or a babyface. If you get yourself over, it is a sin in WWE. And I feel like Triple H has adopted that mentality now. That was the Vince McMahon mentality. You are only over when we say you can only get over. But if you get over without our approval, you're screwed. But people need to understand. People need to understand that the crowd chooses who's over and who's not. The crowd chooses who's over and who's not. And the fans chose Karrion Kross, and now he is getting punished for it. If this whole situation is a shoot, he got punished for it. He got punished for it, and they just decided not to do really anything with him. Yeah, he had a feud with Sami Zayn, but he really should be in a more prominent position. Let's be honest with ourselves. He should be in the main event. He really should be in the main event. I'm not just saying that, and I'm not like acting like a mark. He should be in the main event. He really should. He has everything. This guy has everything, and they're not doing anything with him. It's crazy to me, man. It's crazy. Absolutely crazy. But it is what it is. Look, again, this is a win-win situation for Kross, whether it's a work or a shoot. It is a win-win situation if you're Karrion Kross. If this whole thing is a work, brilliant on WWE. They are a freaking genius. They're geniuses if this whole thing is a work, even though people kind of knew it was kind of a work. But if this whole thing is a shoot, and Karrion Kross is legitimately gone from the company, and from what it looks like, he's actually gone from the company. I mean, this guy announced the whole PWT store. He announced the whole Pro Wrestling T store. And he's now taking independent bookings. Clearly, this whole thing, from what it looks like, he's gone from the company. Maybe this is actually still a whole work with Karrion Kross maybe taking independent bookings without being under a WWE contract, and eventually raising his stock a little bit more, maybe for maybe 1 or 2 months, and then eventually going back to the WWE. Who knows? But again, this whole thing could very well be a shoot. It's very stupid on WWE's end if they're actually letting this guy go. Like WWE, you know, we tend to praise WWE, especially now with the successes that they've been doing. But, I mean, this is just a stupid decision if they're really deciding to let Kross go. It's a really, really, really dumb decision on WWE's end. And honestly, it's ridiculous, in my opinion. It's dumb. It's really dumb. Those are my thoughts on Karrion Kross. All right, continuing on with the WrestleHavoc podcast. It is Monday, August 11th, 2025. Thank you guys so much if you guys are watching the show on my YouTube channel, WrestleHavoc, or if you guys are watching on WNN platforms. I thank you guys so much for watching this episode of the WrestleHavoc podcast. Well, we're going to be talking about media rights because it's been a crazy week for TKO. Groundbreaking deals on both the WWE end and the UFC end. And we're going to be talking about first WWE. WWE has announced a new deal with ESPN. Yes, ESPN and WWE reach landmark rights agreements as ESPN platforms become the exclusive U.S. domestic home of all WWE premium live events, including WrestleMania starting in 2026. I'm reading this. I'm reading their press release by WWE. ESPN, a subsidiary of the Walt Disney Company and WWE, part of TKO Group Holdings, Inc., today announced a landmark rights agreement as ESPN platforms, including the new ESPN direct-to-consumer streaming service, will be the exclusive U.S. domestic home of all WWE premium live events, including the two-night cultural phenomenon WrestleMania starting in 2026. This deal makes ESPN home to the highest-profile WWE events of the year. The ESPN direct-to-consumer service will stream WWE PLEs annually in their entirety, with select simulcasting on ESPN linear platforms. And that is something that I will be talking about because clearly people do not know how to read and what that means. And that's actually a good thing. Marquee PLEs including WrestleMania and SummerSlam, both two-night events, and Royal Rumble, Survivor Series, Money in the Bank, among others. WWE will continue to produce all PLEs. Jimmy Pitaro, chairman of ESPN, stated this, and I quote, WWE has an immense, devoted, and passionate fan base. We're excited to super serve on our new ESPN direct-to-consumer platform. This agreement, which features most significant WWE events of the year, bolsters our unprecedented content portfolio and helps drive our streaming future. Mark Shapiro, president and chief operating officer of TKO, stated this, and I quote, we are proud to reinforce the E in ESPN at such an exciting juncture in its direct-to-consumer journey. WWE Premium Live events are renowned for exactly the type of rich storytelling, incredible feats of athleticism, and can't-miss cultural tentpole experiences that have become synonymous with ESPN. Through our UFC relationship, we have experienced firsthand how transformational an ESPN presence can be, and we know this will be an exceptional partnership at a time of great innovation for both companies. Nick Khan, who, by the way, we will be talking about because this man does not stop when it comes to his negotiations. He stated this, and I quote, WWE's agreement with ESPN is a pivotal moment for our millions of fans across the United States. Leader in sports entertainment, partnering with the biggest brand in sports media. Bringing WWE's flagship events to ESPN's platforms is tremendously exciting. We know the sky's the limit. ESPN platforms, including its direct-to-consumer service, will have the opportunity to stream WWE's pre- and post-event shows tied to all premium live events. All of ESPN, all in one place, coming soon. And this part of the press release is actually talking about their direct-to-consumer service, which I believe is coming out in a couple of weeks. I believe later in the month of August. For the first time ever, ESPN will offer its full suite of networks and services directly to fans along with an enhanced ESPN app that integrates game stats, betting information, fantasy sports, commerce, multi-view options, and personalized sports center for you. Designed to give fans more choice, flexibility, and across all of ESPN. These new features and functionality will be available to all fans who watch on the ESPN app on mobile and connected TV devices, whether they subscribe directly or through a traditional pay TV package. For more, visit ESPN DTC Press Kit, which DTC stands for Direct to Consumer. All right, there's a lot to take in when it comes to this new deal. Now, initially, when I found out about this news, part of me was kind of like, oh, damn, now you got to start paying for these WWE PLEs. Because I remember when Endeavor first bought the WWE and when the deal was finally finalized, because it took a while for the deal to finalize, because they announced the deal 2 years ago after WrestleMania 39. Like the day after WrestleMania 39, that was when they announced the deal that WWE was getting sold to Endeavor. Because, again, the beginning of 2023, I mean, Vince McMahon was still slowly, like, kind of in the weeds, and he was trying to sell the company off. And there was a lot of rumored, places where WWE could sell, whether that was NBC, Disney was in the discussion, Amazon. And then once Endeavor started flowing around, I'm like, honestly, I think Endeavor's, like, probably the best place for them to sell WWE off. Imagine WWE and UFC all in one boat. Well, we're in 2025, and WWE and UFC, once competitors, now are all under the same boat. And they're both media powerhouses. But I remember when the deal finally finalized, I was like, do not be surprised when WWE is going to start charging you for these PLEs. And essentially, they're still charging you for these PLEs, $30 a month. Now, this whole new ESPN app is not ESPN Plus. This is not a situation where now, if you watch the UFC, this is not a situation where you pay for ESPN Plus. You pay a certain price monthly for just ESPN Plus. But whenever a UFC pay-per-view is about to air, you pay separately for that pay-per-view. So you not only pay for ESPN Plus, you pay for that UFC pay-per-view, which is like $80. And we'll be talking about the UFC because they announced a landmark deal with Paramount. And it's effectively killing the pay-per-view model, because you're no longer going to have to pay those $80 for the UFC pay-per-view. But I will be talking about UFC, and I will tell you guys why I will be talking about UFC later in this podcast, because it's something that more people really need to talk about. But think about this. In this press release, it stated this, and I quote, "The ESPN direct-to-consumer service will stream all WWE PLEs annually in their entirety with," and this is the key part that everybody is missing, "with select simulcasting on ESPN linear platforms." So think about this. The ESPN direct-to-consumer service is not just any like app. When you pay the $30, you're essentially getting everything ESPN. So you're getting all of the cable channels of ESPN. So I'm talking about ESPN, ESPN2, ESPNU, all of those platforms, all of those cable channels of ESPN. You're getting everything. You're getting everything. Now, if you watch sports and you watch ESPN, and for example, if you watch the Pat McAfee show, or if you watch First Take, I mean, bro, this is like a win for you. But think about this. If you have cable, and this is the part that everybody is missing. This is the part that everybody is missing. If you have cable, you don't have to pay the $30. If you have cable, you do not have to pay the $30. You can just sign up. If you just download the app and you add all of the information there about, ESPN or all your cable information, and you got the app. You got the app. And you got the WWE PLE right there, essentially for free, because you're already paying for cable. You don't need to pay an extra $30 for the ESPN app. But this is the crazy part. Select simulcasting on ESPN linear platforms. This is huge. Select simulcasting. What does that mean? So, for example, if it's like a WrestleMania or a SummerSlam, they're not only going to simulcast on the app, they're going to simulcast it on the ESPN network. I mean, I don't know about y'all, but that is huge. That is huge, and honestly, that is a big deal. That is a big deal. Everybody's thinking that they're going to have to pay $30 for just the WWE PLE. No, it's not $30 for just the WWE PLE. Again, these people live in their own little bubble. These people live in their own little bubble. If you're an avid watcher of ESPN, this is a great deal for you. And if you have cable, you do not have to pay the $30 for the PLE, which is great. It's fantastic. This is a tremendous deal. This deal is worth well over $1 billion. And essentially, WWE is paying them well over, or I should say ESPN, not WWE. Essentially, ESPN is paying WWE like roughly over $300 million per year. This is huge. WWE is smart, and this is the thing that a lot of people just don't give WWE credit for. They are really smart in the power of IP. They are really smart in the power of their media rights. They have multiple different franchises. This is very similar to what the NFL does. NFL has Monday Night Football, Sunday Night Football, Thursday Night Football. So if you want to watch Sunday Night Football, you can watch that on ESPN. No, Sunday Night Football is on NBC, sorry. If you want to watch Sunday Night Football, that's on NBC. If you want to watch Monday Night Football, that's either on, I believe, ABC or ESPN, because they're all under the same roof. So you're able to watch it on those platforms. And if you want to watch Thursday Night Football, you're going to have to watch it on Amazon Prime Video. And for each one of those franchises, NFL is getting paid billions of dollars because it's the freaking NFL. They're literally like the top sports entity in the United States. WWE is essentially doing a very similar thing. I stated this, and I quote a couple of days ago when this whole deal was announced. Everybody talks about what's the next NFL? What's the next NFL? In terms of media rights, I'm telling you guys this right now, TKO is literally the next NFL. Because these people are making deals left and right. They have two media powerhouses, that being the WWE and UFC. You can call them power hungry all you want, and that is a very valid argument to make. But, I mean, when it comes to their media rights, these people are one of the smartest people out there. Nick Khan. I don't care what anybody says, but Nick Khan is one of the most important, if not the most important hiring that WWE has made in the last 20 years. Nick Khan is literally and this is not me kissing Nick Khan's ass. I'm just saying my opinion on what I see. Nick Khan is literally the master of the art of negotiation. This guy like knows everything. If you are running a multi-million-dollar or multi-billion-dollar business in terms of television, you want Nick Khan by your side because he can get you that deal like that. How do you think WWE got that Fox deal back in 2019 or 2018? 2018 was where they announced the deal, but why do you think they got that Fox deal? It's because of Nick Khan. How did you think they got that Netflix deal? It's because of Nick Khan. These are big moves, man. These are big moves. Now, a lot of people have been asking in terms of what is going to be happening when it comes to the tape library. And that's actually a valid question to make because now their entire tape library, or at least most of the tape library, is on Peacock. The Raw library is on Netflix here in the States. Internationally, everything is on Netflix. So if you're really taking things into consideration, their entire tape library is actually like scattered across multiple different networks or multiple different streaming services. Is the tape library going to be a part of this, or is it just the PLEs? Because essentially, ESPN is actually paying more for less. They're just paying for the PLEs, and those are major events. But, I mean, their tape library, that could be another thing that WWE could license out, or, another streaming service could license. It's interesting. It's a very interesting thing that it's a very interesting thing that we need to talk about. Is Peacock going to keep the PLE, the tape library? I have no idea. I don't think so. But we're gonna have to wait and see. We're gonna have to wait and see. But this is a huge deal. And if you're so butthurt about having to pay $30 if you don't have cable, because again, cable is dying. It's dying a slow death. Every day people are cutting the cord. That's just the nature of the beast. I don't have cable anymore. I literally stream everything. If I watch AEW, I watch it on HBO Max. If I watch Raw, I watch it on Netflix. If I watch SmackDown, I use via VPN and watch it on Netflix. But from what it looks like, SmackDown is probably going to air on Peacock as well. Which I don't know why that wasn't a part of the new NBC Universal deal. Like, how come you're able to simulcast Saturday night's main event on not only NBC, but also on Peacock, but SmackDown's on the USA Network, but you're not simulcasting it on Peacock? It just doesn't make any sense. So I feel like they're going to start essentially simulcasting on Peacock, which honestly they should really do. It would be a really smart move on WWE's end. And honestly, it'd be a really smart move for NBC Universal to do that because they're going to be losing a lot of content. They're going to be losing a lot of content by 2026. Like, how come AEW is simulcasting AEW programming on TBS and Mac or HBO Max, and WWE's not simulcasting SmackDown? It's ridiculous. I have to use a VPN to watch SmackDown. You know what I'm saying? They should really think about doing that. But again, this deal is huge. But WWE is not the only entity that's signed a huge deal. Of course, the second half of TKO, that being the Ultimate Fighting Championship, the UFC, has announced a groundbreaking, and I'm reading this from Yahoo Sports' website. The UFC agrees to a groundbreaking $7.7. Think about this. A $7.7 billion deal with Paramount and CBS. CBS, they used to air those competitors by the UFC. I'm talking about Elite XC. Remember Elite XC, guys? They used to air specials of Strike Force, which was like probably, Strike Force was not real. It was a competitor to the UFC, but like if you compare it to like Pride was really like the main competitor of the UFC. But like they eventually bought out Pride and they eventually bought out Strike Force. So like who was to say? But CBS used to air MMA fights that weren't the UFC. They aired, they aired Elite XC. They would air Strike Force, and then they would later air Bellator. And Bellator's not even a thing. PFL bought the belt. They bought Bellator. They eventually killed off Bellator. Dude, PFL is garbage. But still, The UFC agrees to a groundbreaking $7.7 billion deal with Paramount and CBS, ditching the pay-per-view model. I'm reading this once again from Yahoo Sports. The UFC, the Ultimate Fighting Championship, is coming to Paramount Plus and CBS in 2026. The company agreed to an astounding 7-year. This deal is worth over This deal is worth 7 years. $7.7 billion contract with the company. Dana White and Paramount announced on Monday. Dana White confirmed the move in a post on Instagram saying, quote unquote, puts UFC amongst the biggest sports in the world. His full statement read, this historic deal with Paramount and CBS is incredible for UFC fans and our athletes. For the first time ever, fans in the United States will have access to all UFC content without a pay-per-view model. It's about damn time they're taking the WWE route, which is great, making it more affordable and accessible to view the greatest fights on a massive platform. This deal puts UFC amongst the biggest sports in the world. The exposure provided by Paramount and CBS networks under this new structure is a huge win for all of our athletes and anyone who watches and loves this sport. Paramount confirmed both the length and cost of the deal in a news release on Monday. While the average annual cost of the deal is $1.1 billion annually, Paramount is paying the UFC $1.1 billion. It's crazy. The payment structure is weighted, with Paramount paying less money early in the deal. The deal is only for the UFC's U.S. television rights. Paramount is interested in buying the company's international rights when they become available, it said in Monday's release. It's a bold new step for the UFC. Under the new deal, it's ditching the pay-per-view model, which honestly, it's about damn time because you have to pay $80 freaking for a UFC pay-per-view. All UFC events, including 13 numbered shows and 30 fight nights, will be included as part of the normal subscription with Paramount Plus. Select number of events will be simulcast on CBS. Think about this. CBS used to air Elite XC, Strike Force, Bellator. Now they're airing the UFC. That's crazy. Think about that. Imagine telling Dana White that back in like 2009. Under UFC's previous rights deals, premium events could only be viewed via pay-per-view. Fans looking to watch events under UFC's current deal needs to own an ESPN Plus subscription and pay an additional $79.99 for premium UFC fights. That model will continue through 2025, so any fans who want to watch UFC 319 on Saturday will still need to go through that process. Starting in 2026, all fans will need to watch UFC events is a subscription to Paramount Plus. That is a huge win if you are a UFC fan. A huge win if you are a UFC fan. It's about damn time UFC actually took that model. But why am I talking about this whole UFC deal? Number one, I'm talking about this whole UFC deal because UFC is a part of TKO. TKO owns both WWE and the UFC. But I'm also talking about this because this could relatively affect any other competitors in the market. I'm talking about the AEWs of the world, the PFLs, all of those different organizations. Andrew Baydala, who's a very prominent figure in the wrestling community, and if you really want to know the deep ends of the media rights landscape in pro wrestling, you can talk to Andrew Baydala because he's really smart at that type of stuff. He tweeted this, and I quote, and I agree with him 100% when it comes to what he stated on X. He stated this, and I quote, the real quote-unquote war. The majority of the IWC and reporters were so focused on the spectacle of which talent was moving, where, who was jumping to WWE or AEW, and the ever-changing ratings landscape, they believed that this was the essence of the wrestling quote-unquote war. However, the real battle has been much quieter and has played out behind the scenes among executives and decision makers. WWE and TKO recognized AEW as legitimate competition, and their strategy reflected that acknowledgement. Rather than just reacting to ratings or talent acquisitions, they took a broader approach by expanding their brands, such as the WWE and UFC, across multiple media and streaming platforms. This tactic effectively closed off potential revenue streams and viewership for their rivals, i.e. AEW, PFL, One Championship, limiting avenues where AEW could grow its product and audience. The actual quote-unquote war involved strategic partnerships, media rights deals, and global distribution. Why do you think TNA, who is, by the way, partnered with WWE, all of a sudden announcing multiple different television deals in many different international markets. They're doing that because it can take away from AEW's possible media rights landscape in terms of international markets, all aimed at ensuring WWE and its affiliates held the upper hand in the industry. TKO's decision to diversify its offerings across various platforms showcased a proactive approach to maintaining dominance in a crowded marketplace. While AEW has undoubtedly carved out a significant niche and isn't going anywhere, and that is very much true, I believe once their current deal, their distribution deal with Warner Brothers is up. And honestly, I'm going to say this right here and right now. The deal that they cut late last year with Warner Brothers Discovery and then putting all of their talent on HBO Max has benefited AEW tremendously. But I will say, he stated this, and I quote, while AEW has undoubtedly carved out a significant niche and isn't going anywhere, it's crucial to recognize that TKO/WWE is actively aware of this competition. The strategies that they've employed may not always be visible to the general fan base. Still, they're inactive of an industry actively shaping its future while navigating the complex landscape of sports entertainment. Those are the words coming from Andrew Baydala. Shout out to Andrew Baydala because he is spot on with this statement. A lot of people, a lot of fans are not talking about this. I stated this when I was talking about the WWE ESPN deal. I was talking about this when I was talking about the UFC CBS/Paramount deal. TKO is very strategic in the decisions that they are making. They're very smart. They are not stupid whatsoever. They know what they are doing. And they see AEW as legitimate competition. At least on the WWE end, they see AEW as legitimate competition. I mean, they're planning, if you guys don't know, they're actually planning on going head-to-head with AEW All Out, which, by the way, is going to be taking place in September 20th, Saturday, September 20th. According to Post Wrestling, WWE is actually planning a WWE PLE, a main roster PLE, to go head-to-head with AEW All Out. So on September 20th, you're either going to have a choice. You're either going to watch the WWE show, which is rumored to be Bad Blood, which is rumored to be taking place in, I believe, Indianapolis. But you either have a choice. You're either probably going to watch the WWE PLE, which is presumably going to be Bad Blood, or AEW All Out. So on one hand, it's a bad thing because you're forcing fans to choose. But at the same time, it is actually a good move because, again, a lot of content creators are able to have a lot of content. I know I'm going to talk about both shows. I don't know how I'm going to watch both shows at the same freaking time. It's going to be very interesting. But, I mean, it's a smart move on WWE end, but at the same time, it's kind of dumb on WWE's end to really be focused on AEW way too much. It's kind of a bad look if you really think about it. I mean, WWE is literally the industry leader, and they're focused on somebody who they themselves numerous times deemed that they weren't competition. Meanwhile, they're going head-to-head with their biggest show of the year, and now they're going head-to-head with All Out. I mean, it's ridiculous. But from the media rights landscape, this is actually a very smart move on TKO. From the media rights landscape, and if you talk about the nature of television rights, people need to understand cable is dying a slow death. But even though we live in a landscape where cable is dying, many of these television platforms are paying big money because they are starving for content. That's why they're paying top dollar to places like the NBA, the NFL, NHL. Now we're seeing that with wrestling. Wrestling nowadays is the structure of wrestling has changed. Wrestling back in the day used to be strictly a live event business. And it's still relatively a live event business. And it's not just with wrestling. It's with other combat sports like mixed martial arts and boxing. And what's interesting is speaking of boxing still adopts the pay-per-view model. Boxing still adopts the pay-per-view model. This is going to affect boxing tremendously because boxing promotions, I'm talking about the Golden Boys, I'm talking about Matchroom, all of those different organizations, they top rank. They pay top dollar. You have to pay top dollar for their shows. But I mean, we've seen with the Jake Paul Mike Tyson fight. I mean, we watched it for free on Netflix. You know what I'm saying? But still, this is going to affect boxing tremendously. But in terms of AEW, this is actually very smart. It's a very smart competitive tactic on TKO. Because think about this. TKO as a whole, across both the WWE and UFC, they have deals with ESPN, NBC Universal, the CW, CBS, and Paramount. Technically, they have a deal with Fox to air, of course, Evolve on the Tubi platform. It's only Tubi. Tubi is literally a platform that is strictly free. It's a free streaming service, and they air their WWE Evolve show. But Tubi is owned by Fox. So all of those platforms are across the WWE and UFC. It's going to be actually very tough for many of these other organizations. I'm talking about AEW and places like PFL, which, by the way, PFL, ironically, has a deal with ESPN. They have a deal with ESPN, and UFC is on that same platform that PFL is on. It's crazy, but it's going to be very hard, especially for a company like AEW, if they want to like negotiate or move to a new platform. A lot of those platforms that WWE and the UFC are on, they're going to be off the table. They're going to be off the table, at least for the most part, because they already have active deals with both WWE and the UFC. So, for example, if AEW is in talks with, for example, now granted, this I'm talking about years down the line. I'm not talking about now. AEW, I'm not going to sit here and say AEW is going anywhere, because they are not. They're going to be around for a long, long period of time. They're going to be around for a long time. A long time. I'm talking well over 20 years. They're going to be around for a long period of time, in my opinion. I believe so. Because again, they were smart in taking the television route. But it's going to be very hard for AEW, especially once their current deal is up, to negotiate with another major platform, because again, ESPN is off the table, CBS is off the table, all of those platforms are off the table. You know, they were smart in moving their pay-per-views to Amazon Prime. If you want, you can pay for their pay-per-views on Amazon Prime. But I remember when AEW announced this deal with Warner Brothers late last year, everybody was curious as to how the deal was going to work when it came to their pay-per-views. Are you able to watch these shows on HBO Max? Because you're able to watch Dynamite and Collision on HBO Max, but the pay-per-views, you still have to pay the extra $50. From what we see with the WWE and UFC, essentially TKO killed the pay-per-view model. Pay-per-view in terms of pro wrestling and MMA, like you no longer have to pay a certain price, a certain amount of dollars for a UFC pay-per-view. You don't have to pay $80 come 2026. You can just pay for Paramount Plus and you get the UFC pay-per-view. Now, WWE is a little different. I mean, you have to pay $30 for this direct-to-consumer service, but if you have cable, you don't have to pay the extra $30. I don't know how AEW is going to do with when it comes to their pay-per-view model, but as of right now, you can watch their pay-per-views across multiple different platforms for AEW. You can watch on Amazon Prime or other types of platforms like YouTube. Like, I would watch my pay-per-views on YouTube. It's interesting, but apparently the infrastructure for pay-per-views not there on HBO Max yet, which I don't know what is taking so long, but still, it's interesting. I mean, I'm very curious as to when the AEW pay-per-views are able to be available live on HBO Max. But this is very true. I mean, this deal that the WWE made last week with ESPN and the deal that the UFC made today is huge. And it can tremendously affect their competitors in a big way, because it limits the amount of platforms that these organizations are able to negotiate with. And that is huge. And that is a very smart competitive tactic. It's a very smart competitive tactic. And if you're any business, this is what you should focus on. If you are a promotion, if you are a national promotion, the number one thing you should focus on is the IP that you have available. WWE is very smart in splitting their media rights. They essentially took the NFL format. They took the NBA format. NBA does a very similar thing. AEW, honestly, once their current deal with Warner Brothers is up, they should really think about splitting their media rights. Maybe move Collision to, maybe sell Collision off to another network. It's a smart move. It is a very smart move. And more promotions really need to take that into consideration. But it's a very smart competitive tactic on TKO's end. A very smart competitive tactic. All right. That was the WrestleHavoc podcast from Monday, August 11th, 2025. We definitely talked about a lot of things regarding professional wrestling. We talked about a lot of things, man. Huge news in the landscape of pro wrestling. Karrion Kross, I mean, it was all over the place, man. We do not know if this whole situation was a work or a shoot, but we are going to have to wait and see. But at the end of the day, please like, subscribe, comment down below, push that bell for notifications. I mean, look out for more videos right here on the WrestleHavoc channel, in which we discuss everything in and outside of the squared circle. Make sure to like and subscribe for more content. And as the friggin' referee would say, ring, ring, ring that damn bell for more notifications. As always, it is yours truly, Flamin' Ricky DeRays, signing out. I'll see you guys all in the next video. Peace.